pay my quarter?
No.
All right. Let me get to our guest. It is Senator Charlie Ross. Hello, sir. How you doing?
Great to be on your show today.
Turn his mic on.
He didn't give me a quarter.
We both paid our quarters.
No, he didn't give me a quarter.
Idiot.
I want my quarter.
Well,
have you got me now?
Yeah, loud and clear. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
How's the campaign
Great to be on you. Hot and heavy, I tell you. On the road all the time.
I got several questions, and I want to get to those questions, and we'll. And the phone numbers are 888-808-8637 or 952-0986 or star 222 cellular South free call. What's the most contested issues out there?
People really care about the immigration issue, and that's why, if you look at my website, I've got a detailed plan to address that. To the extent we can at the state level. I believe in being straightforward, and there are some things we can do at the state level, but really the feds have to get their act together to really address the root cause.
So you think it's got to be handled from a national basis first of all?
Well, to stop the bleeding, they got to secure the border. Mm-hmm. But there are some things we can do here. For example, these people don't just show up. People bring them in, and the people who traffic them in make that a serious felony and put a lot of emphasis on putting them in jail. The forgery problem, and, illegals that DUIs get arrested, deny bail to them, and train our law enforcement to enforce the immigration laws.
I was looking on your website, and I see here, it says that's why I wrote and introduced legislation to require employers to withhold 5% of the wages of all non-resident aliens.
Yeah. And
why would do? But this is almost like a tax or legalizing this, a 5% surcharge. Well, why would you want to do that?
Well, here's the issue, Paul. These people have forged documents. And if somebody's here illegally, and by the way, that passed the Senate without opposition. Mm-hmm. House didn't take it up.
What passed? The 5%?
The 5%.
Okay.
If somebody's here legally, they'll file a tax refund, mm-hmm. and no harm done. But if they're not here legally, they're not going to file a tax return. The purpose behind that is to make sure that illegals, if they are here, at least pay the same taxes as other Mississippians.
But doesn't that negate what you're talking about, Senator Ross? That first of all, what you're saying is, okay, if you're here illegal, fine, we'll just take a 5% surcharge and make the employees keep up with that.
No, not at all. It just says that if you're not a citizen, mm-hmm. And citizenship means something, Paul.
Well, I understand. Then you also said in Mississippi we need to develop incentives to encourage state contractors to participate in programs such as the Federal Work Authorization Verification Pilot Program that may be available in an effective way of establishing legal residency. Our goal is to have no illegal immigrants getting a paycheck from the state of Mississippi. To develop incentives to encourage state contractors to participate. If it's against the law, why do we need to have incentives for state contractors?
It's against the law to hire illegal. The problem is determining who is illegal. Mm-hmm. And there's a federal pilot program out there, and nobody knows if it's effective. I've received data that indicates it may be up to 30 or 35% ineffective. I think it's a responsibility of the state to find out what's effective out there. And the way the federal law is written, you can't just try to verify the ones you think may be illegal. Mm-hmm. You have to verify every single person.
I understand that.
And if there's a high error rate, you could be denying the job to a Mississippi citizen.
And you could have a trial lawyer knocking on the door in the next 24 hours.
And you get sued.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is to do things that address the illegal problem without putting an innocent employer in jeopardy.
You guys had a major impact bill several years ago, and I remember this when I was doing my research for this and many other things. And it was a major impact bill, and we put that in legislation. If you have public works, which, do you remember that? When we put it into public works, you cannot hire illegals, and if a company that's getting any type of bonding or bonding financing or any type of incentives, those are negated if they are charged with hiring illegals. We have that in effect already, don't we?
Well, we have it. There's a prohibition against hiring illegals. Now, the next step is to make that prohibition effective, because somebody walks in with forged documents, and you look at them.
Wait a minute. You lost me. We have a law. Now we ought to enforce the law. But what we do is we put exceptions into all of these things. Did we put an exception into the river bend?
I don't understand. I don't think we put any exceptions in there. We just made a statement that you can't hire illegals. Now, the next question is, how does the employer enforce that?
My understanding is, Senator Ross, we put an exception in Sevacor, too, where you guys in the House and Senate passed this and said we do major legislation of impact study or impact bonding, that you cannot hire any illegals. If you do, you've lost your tax incentives. And every time we have a major project, I think we did it in Toyota, I know we did it in Sevacor, we passed another bill to say, well, negate that part of the law.
I'm not familiar with that. I know the language was in there about not hiring illegals. Now, the exception stuff, I'm not aware of an exception.
You're not aware that we have, I think it was 20, I forgot what the number was for the last bill, but we had an exception for Sevacor, and we also had an exception for Toyota.
I just have to check, Paul. I'm not aware of that. The other hot issue that
voter ID
gets a lot of, I get asked this just about every time, is voter ID. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, I called upon the governor to call us back in special session because I think it's a piece of unfinished business. My approach to it is, one, I'm for voter ID. I think you're probably for it too. It's a good idea. You can't cash a check without showing an ID. And two, the Senate's been passing it for years. With the tort reform issue, the way we finally got it was a special session where all the media, all of Mississippi was looking, and nobody could run and hide. And I think if you get it to the floor of the House, it passes. The key is putting enough pressure on the House leadership to allow a vote, and the way you do that is with a special session.
What is the governor going to call a special session for that?
I don't know. You read his quote in the paper. He said he favors ID, and if he thought the House would pass it, and I think he's referring to the House leadership if he'd let it out.
Voter integrity. Do you think voter integrity, as far as the trustworthiness of the voter ID and showing an ID, is important? Voter integrity is important.
I think it's critical. Senator Richard White down in South Highlands County, we had to have a whole trial in the Senate and then another election, and saw documentation where people had signed in the same handwriting, and
I understand. I saw the very same thing, and it was very disturbing.
And you talk to people across the state, they know that we need voter ID, and they don't understand why we hadn't passed it, and I think it's as important as tort reform and economic incentive package.